Mrs. Packeltide's Tiger. Now this story is written by Saki. The author's original name is not Saki but some other name. So who is this Saki? Let us reveal the secret. It is Hector Hugh Munro. Now this author has very interesting things about himself. So let us read a bit. He was born on 18 December 1870 and up till 14 November 1916 he had lived. Better known by his pen name, as I told you, Saki, and also frequently as H. Munro. He was a British writer who was very witty, very mischievous, and sometimes macabre stories satirize the Edwardian societies and the cultures. So he is considered the master of the short stories and often compared to O. Henry and Dorothy Parker's. Now let us start with the story. This story had in a tiger that was to be killed. Now, what was the motive for killing that tiger? Mrs. Packeltide decided to shoot a tiger, and the reason behind it was nothing else but her deeply rooted hatred for Luna Bimberton. This Luna Bimberton was considered to be the main rival of Mrs. Packeltide. So Luna Bimberton had recently had a joyride in an aeroplane with an Algerian pilot, and Mrs. Packeltide wanted to outdo her rival. So actually what happened, this lady Luna Bimberton had a very nice time. She had killed a tiger and she was already becoming very famous and all, right? So she had a very nice time and interview sort of a thing with this Algerian pilot, and she was becoming famous. So her rival, that is Mrs. Packeltide, wanted to just outdo her. So she wanted to do something more exciting and more adventurous than Luna's feat. So she wanted to be more famous than her rival. And hence the idea of killing a tiger came in the mind of Mrs. Packeltide. Let us see, or probably we will come to know what actually Luna Bimberton did to become famous. She might have killed a tiger or she might not have. We will talk about it later. But what Mrs. Packeltide decided to do to outdone her, she decided to start killing a tiger, as killing a tiger would make her very famous all across the world, even more than her rival Luna Bimberton. So what she did next was she killed the tiger. So to earn the publicity and fame, the motive of killing was, as we have discussed, to earn a lot of publicity and fame. She wanted to overshadow Luna's act, and Mrs. Packeltide wanted the press and the magazines to publish her photographs with the dead tiger's skin. And she had decided to present a tiger claw brooch to Luna Bimberton on her next birthday. Now, are you noticing how much eager was she to outdone her rival, that she decided to kill a tiger, get its skin and publish her photograph along with that skin in the newspapers and magazines even. And not even that, it was not all for her. What she decided was that she is gonna gift a tiger claw brooch, as we all have seen. That brooch was to be gifted to her rival on her birthday, because her rival was already that famous. If she would be gifting her such a nice thing, that will be again another factor that would make her famous. So just see how this woman's mind is working this time. So what happened next was the circumstances that proved very favorable. Circumstances were very favorable for Mrs. Packeltide. A tiger could be seen roaming frequently in a forest in a nearby village. So the neighboring village already had a tiger that was somewhat seen somewhat the other time. So the old tiger had confined his activities only to the small domestic animals. The villagers were very much tempted that Mrs. Packeltide would definitely kill the tiger, and the offer she gave was that the prospect of getting 1,000 rupees. So Mrs. Packeltide wanted a safer and convenient shooting. Therefore, she offered the villagers 1,000 rupees to help her be safe. The villagers did her best and confined the tiger to his present quarters. Now what they did, they were very much getting bribed by that lady, so they also decided to help her out, and for that they also confined the tiger. Maximum care was taken not to disturb his rest or sleep. Mother caring their babies hushed their singing not to disturb the restful sleep of the old tiger. Just imagine, this lady had bribed the villagers that if you help me out, I am going to pay you a good amount. So all the villagers over there were helping her in this conspiracy to make her famous. Let's see what happened next. Now next was the preparation for the hunt. How did the preparation took off? The great night duly arrived on which the hunt was to be done. So it was moonlight and cloudless night. A platform was constructed in a conveniently placed tree so that she could be easily placed on a place and she could easily hunt the tiger. Mrs. Packeltide sat there with her paid companion, Miss Mebbin. Now, Miss Mebbin was one of her companions over there who had come along with her for the hunting purpose. A goat with the persistent bleat was tied at the correct distance. With her rifle ready in her hands, Mrs. Packeltide waited for the tiger to come out in the open there. Now you know how we do fishing? We all sit down comfortably at a place and then we put that food to be attracting the fishes. So that is what was done over here. They tied a goat at a nearby distance so that the tiger would come to attack that goat, and that very moment this lady, that is Mrs. Packeltide, would hunt that tiger. So let's see what happened next. Now what happened next was the shooting, and let us see, did she actually shot it or not. As soon as the tiger caught the sight of the goat, he lay on the earth. He did not so only to snatch a short rest before being ready for the grand attack. Then Mrs. Packeltide's rifle flashed out with a loud report. So the tiger sprang to one side and rolled over dead on the ground. In a moment, you know how this happens, a crowd of excited natives appeared on the scene and the villagers were celebrating that incident was done. And they were thumping of tom-toms all around. So all these things pleased Mrs. Packeltide. So you know how this all happened? The tiger got the sight. Now as the tiger's habit is, what they do is they just lie down on the ground so that they can leap a little higher and a little better, right? So the tiger also did the same, and that very moment he was just shot by Mrs. Packeltide. Was he actually being shot or not? We will come to it later. Trust me, there is much more to this story. So after this, the secret that is I was talking about. It was Louisa Mebbin who drew Mrs. Packeltide's attention to the fact that the goat was in death throes from a fatal bullet wound. Now you know what happened. The lady, that is Mrs. Packeltide, had shot, but that bullet was not stuck to the tiger, it had stuck to the goat, and the goat was in terribly painful wound and she has been died. So the tiger has not yet died, but why has he been lying on the ground as if he is dead? Let us see. There was no sign of bullet mark on the tiger, as we have just discussed. Clearly the wrong animal had been hit. So Mrs. Packeltide had missed her aim and the old weak tiger died due to the heart failure caused by the loud noise of the rifle. At any rate, she was the possessor of a dead tiger. Now imagine how the coincidence has been done. She wanted to shoot a tiger and become famous. So whosoever shoots the tiger will belong to that person. But over here in this whole scenario, what happened? She wanted to shoot the tiger, but instead by mistake she shot the goat. The goat had died, and by hearing that loud noise of the bullet fire, on the other side the tiger died due to heart failure. So ultimately she made the tiger die, and she is the one who is going to be getting the credit for killing that tiger. So definitely the tiger is going to belong to her only. So what happened next? Mrs. Mebbin blackmailed Mrs. Packeltide now. Mrs. Mebin, the paid companion of Mrs. Packeltide, was a great opportunist. You know, people opportunists these days, whosoever gets an opportunity to get some profit from the other person, we go and do that. So she was that kind of a lady. She threatened her with the disclosure of the secret of Tiger's death, and very clearly she put forward a proposal before Mrs. Packeltide. Now what Miss Mebin is doing, she is blackmailing Mrs. Packeltide that what if you do not accept my proposal, I am going to tell this all to the whole world around that you have not shot the tiger has itself died due to heart failure. So Mrs. Mebin told her that she had seen a week-end cottage neat darking. She wanted to buy a cottage and the cost was 680 freeholds. So it was a good bargain, but she didn't have the money. So you know what she wanted in return? Mrs. Mebin had seen a very nice, a very expensive cottage, and that is why she wanted to bargain with Mrs. Packeltide. That why not Mrs. Packeltide give her some money that she could buy that cottage, and in return Mrs. Mebin will do a favor to her, that is she will keep it a secret. So let's see what happened next. The conclusion of the story. Mrs. Packeltide was blackmailed, but the cottage was to be given to Miss Mebin. In this way, Miss Mebin became the proud owner of the cottage. She named it Les Fauves, or the wild animals. After this incident, Mrs. Packeltide gave up the big game shooting or hunting big animals, and when someone asked, she replied that the incidental or other expenses were so heavy in the big game shooting. So you know what happened? After this, Mrs. Packeltide was so fed up with this game that she had completely given up. And when people used to come to her and ask her that you have been so good, in your first shooting only you have hunted a tiger, why aren't you continuing with it? What she answered was that the expenses that were being paid by me were too much, so I have stopped doing that game. Just imagine. So that was about Mrs. Packeltide's tiger.